I'm very sorry to the little girl who has to sit through church. You're doing such a good job. She sat so patiently through those songs. Good job. So this morning, we're continuing the book of Revelation, chapter 17. I read the first few verses last week. This is a very confusing chapter. At least I find it very confusing. And there are people, and I will kind of share with you some of the ideas. I shared with you at the beginning that there are the four primary ways of reading through the book of Revelation. Well, if you think this is all in the past, then you don't worry about it because it's in the past. If you think it's all symbolic, then you don't worry about it because it's all symbolic. So really the only people that get in debates about what is going on are the ones who see the book as taking place in the future, the futurists. So I'll be sharing with you several of the different ways that futurists see it. Now, symbolically, I think, and I said back then, I think the book can be all four things at once. I really genuinely believe that. And clearly it is symbolic. And the symbolic meaning is the biggest takeaway. And here's the big takeaway. Babylon is going down. Jesus is the Lord of Lords and the King of Kings. Make sure your name is in the book of life. Those are the biggest takeaways. Those are by far the most important things. Now, I titled it The Woman and the Beast because it's talking about a woman and a beast. And then I realized after that, I probably should have changed that title a little bit because I also called the woman the dragon. And in chapter 12 and 13, when we talked about the woman and the dragon, I said the three primary ways to understand that woman are that she's the nation of Israel, she's Mary, as an individual Mary, and she's the church. And it kind of depends on, she kind of shape shifts in and out of those roles. According to, well, that seems to me to make the most sense. There's some who say, no, it's only Mary. There's some who say, no, it's only Israel. That's okay, because my best answer, as I've said many times, is, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, this is what John saw. So I thought the best way to go through this, now here's some, I think, tips, helpful tips. Hopefully they're helpful. If they're not, forget about it. When I get to passages that I can't comprehend, I try to break them down as concretely as I possibly can. Like I remember reading things and it says that we are seated in the heavenly realms with Christ. And I'm like, okay, this is me. I'm seated here. I'm there. Just trying to make sense of it. Well, in this passage, if you want to go home and draw pictures, that might be very helpful. But because I don't have paper and pen for you here, I just want you to be mentally drawing pictures as we go through this. And the other thing is I've decided to just read all 18 verses and kind of make a few comments. And then we'll go back to the beginning and go over it in more depth. But I want you to know the end from the beginning when we start. So, chapter 17, verse 1. And then one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls, and remember the seven last angels, there were the seals, and then there were the trumpets, and then there were the bowls. And the bowls were the seven last plagues. Like with them, the wrath of God is ended. Now, it seems you're getting a close-up of what happened with those bowls, or at least parts of those bowls, or the result of those bowls. And then the chapter that we look at next week, in chapter 18, is going to be even more in-depth on Babylon itself fallen. So, then one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls came and said to me, "Come, I will show you the judgment of the great prostitute who is seated on many waters." So if you're mentally drawing a picture, draw a picture of the great prostitute, and she's seated on many waters, whether that's a big wave or she's just in the middle of an ocean, however you picture that. She is the one with whom the kings of the earth have committed sexual immorality. Now, there's debate whether this is literally talking about sexual immorality, or very often in the Old Testament, God talks about Israel committing adultery in idol worship, because they are to worship him. And whenever their worship goes to something else, it is adultery. He divorces them for adultery. I think it's very plausible that it's both, because there is a lot of sexual immorality. It's like, the great prostitute was sitting on the waters of the earth, and you don't know this yet, but when we get to the last verse, the angel explains that the waters of the earth are the people, the multitudes, the nations, the languages. It's like, it's everywhere. It's just, it's pervasive, and it's destructive. It's not what we were made for. There's a verse in the Song of Solomon that says, "Do not arouse or awaken love before it so desires." And it's spoken by the bride-to-be, and they're not married. And so she's saying, do not arouse or awaken love before it so desires. And I've always taken that, and I think clearly it is like, there's a time for love, and it's not yet. So don't wake it up. But I have a friend who went through some pretty awful things as a kid, and he was seeing a counselor to kind of work through these things. And he said one of the primary verses this counselor used was that verse, because there were things that should have never been awakened or aroused in you, and they were. And now you have to figure out, how do I live in that kind of world? And increasingly, I mean, kids today, the things that just come on their phones, like, they just show up. And here's the funny thing, nobody knows how anything gets to their phone, except, well, Brenda explained it. They hear you and then but it's just like, I don't know, it was just there. I mean, I asked my mom, where'd you find that video? I don't know, it was on my phone. Well, where were you? How did it get there? Well, that's what's happening. That's what's happening. It's just there. And so the kings of the earth have committed sexual immorality, and with the wine of whose sexual immorality the dwellers on the earth have become drunk. Everyone on the earth, they're just drunk with this wine. And he carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast. And whether this is the same woman or a different woman, I'm not sure, but if it's a different woman, this is the mother of the other woman. I know that because of what it's going to say in a minute. I saw a woman, so now you're drawing this woman, right? And you think, oh, she's probably hideous because she's on a beast. I don't think she's hideous, because look at the description. I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names. So this beast is like covered in names that are blaspheming God. And the beast, had 7 heads and 10 horns. So now you got a 7-headed, 10-horned beast covered in blasphemous names. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet. Both of those in biblical times were signs of wealth. These were the nicest materials. She's adorned in purple and scarlet with gold and jewels and pearls. That's like a lot. And she's holding in her hand a golden cup. See, I'm thinking, somehow she has seduced the kings of the earth. She's like, look at me. I'm so beautiful in my purple and my scarlet with my gold and my pearls and my jewels. And look at my cup. This is my Dixie cup I use at night to get a drink. Oh, is it pure gold? I didn't even notice. She's holding in her hand a golden cup, and it's full of the abominations and the impurities of her sexual immorality. She's like drinking the abominations and the sexual immorality, the impurities. And on her forehead, seems there's no shame. I want everyone to know. On her forehead was written a name of mystery, Babylon the Great, mother of all prostitutes, and implied mother of all the earth's abominations. Like, Babylon the Great is the cause of it all, the mother of it all. And I saw the woman, and she was drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. Now think about that. It's not just that there were martyrs. It's not that there just were saints that had been put to death, but they are drinking their blood, feasting on the blood of the martyrs. This is like a glorious thing. Yes, kill more because we're running low. And when I saw her, I marveled greatly. Like John he doesn't know what to say. But the angel said to me, why do you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns that carries her. So good news. Right now, you may say, I don't really understand this. You're going to know, because the angel's going to explain the mystery. It'll be clear as crystal. You'll all be like, so simple. That's not quite true. Susan knows. It's like, yeah, your explanation didn't really help me a lot, but thank you. Why do you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns that carries her. The beast that you saw was and is not and is about to rise from the bottomless pit. So it once was, then it wasn't, and then it's going to be again. And where's it going to come from? From the bottomless pit. And what's it going to come from the pit for? Destruction. And the dwellers on the earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, will marvel to see the beast, because it was and is not and is to come. They marvel. And you are created to worship. You're created to worship. And people who don't worship God will worship something. And so all the dwellers on the earth, those whose names were not found written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, they worship the beast. Who is like the beast? This calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. So now you know what the 7 heads are. The 7 heads are 7 mountains. They also are 7 kings. And you're like, well, which is it? Are they mountains or are they kings? And the angel said, they're both. There's 7 mountains and there's 7 kings. And of these 7 kings, 5 have fallen, 1 is, and the other has yet to come. And when he does come, he must remain only a little while. See, aren't you glad the angel is explaining all of this mystery to you? As for the beast, yes, tell us who the beast is. As for the beast that was and is not, it is an 8th. Oh, an 8th king. Yes, or is it an 8th mountain? So why isn't there just an 8th head? Well, because this is the beast. He's the 8th king, but it belongs to the 7. So he belongs to the 7, but he's the 8th, but he's the beast. Okay. And it, the beast, the 8th king, goes to destruction. And the 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received royal power, but they are to receive authority as kings for 1 hour, which is a very measured and short time. Those 10, they're kings. So we got the 7 heads, which are kings, and the beast, which is an 8th king, and then the 10 kings. And they're going to have this power, but it's for 1 hour together with the beast. These are of one mind, and they hand over their power and authority to the beast, and they will make war on the Lamb. This is my favorite verse in this chapter. And the Lamb will conquer them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings. And those who are called, and those with him are called and chosen and faithful. And the angel said to me, the waters that you saw where the prostitute is seated, they are peoples and multitudes and nations and languages. And the 10 horns that you saw, they and the beast will hate the prostitute, and they will make her desolate and naked and devour her flesh and burn her up with fire, for God has put it into their hearts to carry out his purpose by being of one mind and handing over their royal power to the beast until the words of God are fulfilled. And the woman that you saw is the great city that has dominion over the kings of the earth. There you go. Any questions about chapter 17? So going back to verse 1, he starts and he's shown the prostitute, and she's seated on many waters. And she's the one with whom the kings of the earth have committed sexual immorality, and with the wine of whose sexual immorality the dwellers on the earth have become drunk. And again, I'm going to share with you what some of the futurists say, but I don't want you to forget the big picture. And the big picture is the most important picture. And that's why I say symbolically, you can learn this lesson symbolically. Here's the lesson. Babylon is going down. Jesus is the Lord of Lords and the King of Kings. Make sure your name is in the book of life. Make sure your name and everyone else's name is in the book of life. And Babylon, like, we're all in it because it's around us. How many of you have gone to summer camp or church camp or a family camp or some type of spiritual retreat type place, and you were like, that was the greatest time of my life? I have analyzed this, and I think I can tell you why. I mean, there's a lot of whys, but here are some of the big whys. Because the stories are the same, whether they went, to a monastery spiritual retreat, or whether they went to a mountain trip and they're sitting in the mountains looking at the sunrise. The stories are the same. Like, something happens in their souls. Here's what I think is going on. You wake up in the morning, and instead of turning on the TV or the radio or the news or checking, you're like, hey, let's go to breakfast, because you're with people and you're like engaging face to face. You're loving other people. And before breakfast, they pray. And you're like focused on God because we're praying. And then after breakfast, sometimes you have to do your own dishes or, whatever it is. And then you generally have like a quiet time where you sit and read the Bible alone, or maybe you have a chapel service, or maybe there's a worship time. But there's some God word. I remember being on a missions trip, and after breakfast, we'd go have devotions, and the missionary would just share with us a passage from the Bible. But it's all Jesus-focused. And then you do Jesus-type activities, like paintball. But you're in a place where you're still unplugged from Babylon. And then generally there's like some afternoon-type worship or a service or a class or teaching. And then you have dinner, and guess what? You all pray together before dinner. And then after dinner, you have a chapel service, and it's worship time. And then sometimes you have night activities or, more quiet time. And then you get up tomorrow morning and you do the same thing again. And by the end of the week, you're exhausted because they've had you going from like 6 in the morning till 11 at night. But you've been fueled on Jesus. And you were unplugged from Babylon. You've been in this Jesus bubble. And the Jesus bubble is your favorite place to be. But you live in Babylon. And Babylon just kind of pulls at you and draws at you. And, I need to know. I have to understand. I have to, And the challenge is, how do you live in the world and not be of the world? And not let the world corrupt you? Because all we like sheep have gone astray. Well, figure it out. And I don't mean that I'm trying to figure it out. Like, how do I live here and not, because Babylon is fallen. In fact, in the next chapter, chapter 18, God actually says, come out from her, my people. Because I'm telling you what's going to happen to Babylon. It is going down. And so here she is, and the kings of the earth have committed sexual immorality with the wine of whose sexual immorality the dwellers on the earth have become drunk. And he's like, get away from Babylon. And he carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness. And I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names. And whether now she's the city or the cities of the world, because you remember at the end of chapter 16, all the cities of the world were leveled. And I don't know how it happens, but cities seem to be even more evil. Like they're like the collection of, like, if it's bad, you can find it there. He carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness, and I saw this woman sitting on a scarlet beast, and it was filled with blasphemous names. The people knew that this beast was not a God-fearing, Jesus-loving beast. It was covered in blasphemous names, and it had 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold. And I've told you about it really hit me this January when my friend Jeff Caswell was on his way back from Mexico, where he went down to the little children's home. And he said, J-Dub, I just don't know why I have to go to Mexico once a year to realize how spoiled we are. And then he started telling me about their houses and how they're made of like pallets and plywood. And as he's telling this story, I'm sitting in my living room on my couch. Not my couch, a reclining couch. It wasn't this kind, but it was this kind. That's the noise it makes, apparently. I'm on my reclining couch, and I look, and there's my flat screen TV and my 2 living room guitars, because you need 2 guitars for your living room. And I'm thinking, and I'm listening to Revelation, and like it's the excessive luxury. One story, and I love this story, I'm sure I'll share it again, but this sums up to me the excessive luxury that we have. Because we don't think of it as excessive, because it's what we have. It's like, well, who doesn't have 2 living room guitars? I mean, I told the story one week that I had 3 flat screen TVs, and a guy came up and he goes, I have 5 flat screen TVs in my RV. Yeah, So here's a story. There was this couple down there, and they're just like Jesus-loving salt of the earth. I think they were like 68 years old, hardworking Presbyterians. She makes meals for the kids before church. They're just like the people that, like, I want those people. I want to be those people. I want to be friends with those people. He's a truck driver. If there's anything excessive about them, he likes big breakfasts. Okay, So they remodeled their house, and they took some pictures down, and they were showing them to some of the people in Mexico. And they showed the one picture to one of the ladies, and she said, "Tú tienes un casa por tu carro?" Which translated means, you have a house for your car? She's like, you have a house for your car? Like, how rich are you? You have a house for your car? I told that story to my wife, and she says, well, in Minnesota, you have to. Like, okay. Should have told that to my great-great-great-great-grandfather, because he just had a horse. But anyway, she's adorned in purple and gold and jewels and pearls, and she has a golden cup, and it's full of abominations and impurities. And on her forehead is the mystery, Babylon the Great, mother of prostitutes and of the earth's abomination. And I saw the woman, and she was drunk with the blood of the saints, because there's always been persecution of the church, but it seems it is going to ramp up. And whether it's persecution of Israel, I mean, if they're in Christ, they're the church. So it is, and remember, when the 5th seal was opened, the souls of those who had been put to death for their testimony of Jesus said, how long? And God said, just a little while longer. His people loving him to death, I don't think there's much that is a greater honor. They are drunk. She was drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of the martyrs. And I saw her and I marveled, but the angel said, why do you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast and of the 7 heads and the 10 horns that carried her. The beast that you saw was and is not and is about to rise. So generally, people think of this in 2 primary ways. They say, well, it's the Roman Empire, because the Roman Empire was the most powerful empire in the history of the world, and then it collapsed, and it's going to be resurrected again. And some say, well, no, it's the Antichrist, because the Antichrist, what's going to make people worship him is the fact that he will die, and then he'll be raised to life again, and he will be. And I'm like, could be. Some people, they say it's Judas. That one's a little harder for me to believe, but like Judas died, and then he's going to come back, and he's going to lead this. I don't know. The beast is about to rise from the bottomless pit and go to destruction. And the dwellers on the earth whose names have not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world will marvel to see the beast. And I know it says their names were written from the foundation of the world. That's before you were born. And I don't know how God's sovereignty and God and our man's free will work. I just know this: without him, we have no chance. But we have to do something. Like, we have to believe in our hearts and confess with our mouth. And if you haven't made the decision to be all in on Jesus, I'll tell you one more time, Babylon is fallen. Like, it's all that's left. It's not a thing. It's not a good thing. It's not even the best thing. It's the only thing. Like Peter said, when all the people listening to Jesus started leaving him because his teaching was hard, and Jesus said, "Are you going to leave me too?" And Peter said, "Where else can we go? You have the words of eternal life." All the ones whose names were not written, they marvel to see the beast. And this calls for a mind with wisdom. They have 7 heads or 7 mountains. Now, the 7 mountains have primarily been understood as Rome, because Rome has the 7 hills of Rome, and so they think, oh, it's Rome. That's throughout history. It's been Rome. Now, the interesting / beautiful thing about biblical prophecy is it tends to be interpreted through the lens of when you live. Because now there are some who say, well, you know what city has 7 prominent hills? San Francisco. We think Google is the beast because Google is everywhere. And here's a funny thing, not funny like ha-ha funny. When you were kids and you had to read George Orwell's 1984, you were probably horrified of Big Brother always watching you. And now you're like, I need Big Brother. Where's Big Brother? Here's how I know. How many of you have left your house, realized you didn't have your phone, turned around and got it? Because, well, someone needs to know where I am. They need to be tracking me at all times because I've allowed. And I get it. We're literally at a point now where you almost can't live without a phone. We're happy about it. Like, oh, is that the iPhone 95? Because I still have 94. They're like, throw down some cash. Let them. So 7 hills, 7 mountains are 7, the 7 heads are 7 mountains. They are also 7 kings. Now the 7 kings, some have said they're literally 7 kings, like Caligula and Domitian and Nero. And some have said, no, there's 7 different forms of government throughout history. And some have said, no, there's 7 different nations that have governed. Like we have the Greeks and the Persians. And if there's that much disagreement over, and again, these are all amongst the futurists, so they see the book the same way. That's why my best answer is, I don't know. I just know there's 7 mountains and there's 7 kings, and 5 have fallen, and 1 is, and the other has not yet come. And when he does come, he will remain only a little while. So when the 7th king comes, it's about the end. And as for the beast is the 8th king. And I'm like, yeah, this is the hardest part for me to wrap my mind around. Because like the beast is like 8 things at once. That's why when I say biblical prophecy, it's pretty fluid. It can be understood in a lot of different ways, and a lot of different things can mean a lot of different things. The dragon had 7 heads and 10 horns, and the beast had, everyone has 7 heads and 10 horns. Sorry. And the 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings. So now the 7 heads were 7 kings, and the beast is an 8th king, and now there's 10 more kings, and they're the horns, and they have not yet received royal power. So it seems at the end of the end, there's going to be a lot of power, and it's going to become united power. These 10 kings, whether they're nations or powerful men or whoever they are, there's 10 of them, and they're coming together. And here's what they are going to do with their authority. They're going to give it to the beast. Why? Well, verse 13 says, these are of one mind. And that's remarkable, because very seldom do any 2 people agree on anything. And yet these 10 and the beast, they are of one mind. Why? Because we must defeat the Lamb. That's what unites them. We must defeat the Lamb. These are of one mind, and they hand over their power and authority to the beast, and they will make war on the Lamb. And as I said last week, this war isn't a very long war, because the Lamb will conquer them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and those with him are called and chosen and faithful. And if you have been called by him, be thankful. And you say, I don't know if I've been called. Well, I think you're being called if you haven't been called, because he's calling. As the old hymn that we sang on Sunday nights went, softly and tenderly, Jesus is calling for you and for me. Come home. Come home. You who are weary, come home. They are called and they are chosen and they are faithful. And here's the thing about being faithful. We're not very faithful. I mean, how many of you, and don't raise your hands, but you love Jesus, but you also love stuff that's not Jesus. And you're kind of like impure in heart because you're pulled and you're pulled. And I mean, Rich Mullins said, we have a love that's not as patient as yours was, but we do love now and then. Like now and then we love, now and then we're right, now and then. One of my favorite verses that Paul wrote, he wrote it to Timothy and he says, if we are faithless, he will remain faithful, for he cannot deny himself. And the reason they're around the throne in their white robes is not because they were good enough or deserved it or earned it. It's because their robes were washed in the blood of the Lamb. And those who were with the Lord of Lords and the King of Kings, they were called and chosen and faithful. And the angel said to me, the waters that you saw where the prostitute is seated are peoples and multitudes and nations and languages. I just read this morning that Mark Zuckerberg is talking about like the next new thing, because now iPhones are like 20 years old, and they're talking about like smart glasses. And he says, but the one great thing is now basically everyone on earth has a phone. And I'm like, really? Everyone on earth? And they're plugged in. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but you can find bad things on your phone. Don't type in bad things, just take my word for it. And it's like everywhere. And the 10 horns that you saw, they and the beast, so remember the 10 kings at the end, they and the beast will hate the prostitute. And you're like, whoa, why do they hate her? Because all Satan has is hate. That's it. The world has hate. Have you heard this saying, it's a dog-eat-dog world? They say that because it's a dog-eat-dog world. There's another saying, you don't have to be faster than a lion, just faster than the slowest zebra. And that's true, except one day you will be the slowest zebra. And the beast and the kings, they hate the prostitute. They make her desolate and naked and devour her flesh and burn her up with fire. That's how much they love her. Now, they benefited from her when they benefited. We're done with you now. They hate her. They burn her up. They devour her. Why? Because God has put it into their hearts to carry out his purpose. And this is what happens over and over in the Old Testament. Israel rejects God, so God uses a nation to discipline Israel, and then he uses another nation to discipline that nation, and then he uses another nation to discipline that nation. It's this grand scheme that God has, and somehow with all the individuals and the free will we have, he's making his ultimate purpose come out, and his purpose is that the prostitute, the mother of Babylon, they go down. They are destroyed. And so it's in their hearts to carry out their purpose by being of one mind and handing over their royal power to the beast until the words of God are fulfilled. And the woman that you saw is the great city. And I don't know what city it is. Some say Rome, some say Jerusalem, Washington, D.C., New York City. A guy last night in church, I think he was just being funny, but he shouted out Sheboygan. Yeah. My odds aren't on Sheboygan, but hey. The great city that has dominion over the kings of the earth. And again, that's the mystery. And the angel explained it. And those are some of the ideas about what people have thought. But again, the big takeaway is this: Babylon is fallen. Jesus is the victor. He's the conqueror. He's the Lord of lords and the King of kings. And make sure that your name and anyone that you care about, make sure their names are in the book of life. Let's pray. Father, just help us. And thank you that you so love the world, that you gave your only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. In your name, Jesus, we pray. Amen.